Hi, it's Gary. Welcome to today's video. Well, last week we looked at the details about how we perceive time and how it's different for everybody. I mean, it was a bit of a brain bender and my mind is still reeling from the research I did on it. This week, I thought I'd take a look at answering the actual question that was answered. Why does a journey seem quicker when coming home compared to when going away? So just to further describe that situation, when you go somewhere, the journey back, it always seems to be quicker than the outward journey, even though the distances involved are the same. Psychologists have carried out a number of different experiments to try and answer this. In one experiment in Japan, they had some test subjects. They sat them down in a dim room and they had them watch a 20-minute long video. Now, the subjects, they were split into two groups. The first, they watched a video where the return route was the opposite of the outward route. So you go there and you come back again using the same route. The second group, they were shown the same outward route twice. So the return part was the outward one being repeated. In both groups, the participants, they were asked to report every time that 3 minutes had passed. What they found was that in both groups, the participants, they were able to fairly accurately measure every time that 3 minutes had passed. But when asked about the return leg timing, the first group, the one that did the outward and reverse journey, they remembered the return leg as being faster than the outward one. Whereas the second group, who did that same leg twice, they didn't report this same thing. This, it's referred to as the return trip effect. It's thought to have something to do with hindsight and the way that our mind tells ourselves and other people stories. In order to experience this return trip effect, you need to know you're making a return trip. Some theories to help explain this, while they include things like paying attention to time itself. The more you pay attention to time, well, the longer it seems to take, doesn't it? We all see that. We have that old saying, time flies when you're having fun. But also, a watched pot never boils. I bet we've all experienced this at times, haven't we? I know I certainly do most days, waiting for the kettle to boil for my morning coffee. When you're actively checking the time, it seems to take longer. But when you're distracted by other things, that time, it seems to pass by quicker. Now here, this is where mindfulness, it appears to be able to slow down time. Because you're paying attention to what's going on, time seems to pass that little bit more slowly. Another theory, it has to do with familiarity. When you're making the return trip, well, you're already aware of a lot of the main landmarks, a lot of the main sites that you're going to pass. You passed them, didn't you, on the way there? This means that you're actually looking for them, you're actively trying to find them. And that, it acts as a distraction and it makes the time appear to move faster. And the return trip effect, it doesn't just occur on these one-off trips where you're going away for a day, away on holiday. It can also happen with your daily commute. And this, it's thought to be related to anticipation. Also a part of that familiarity. You know, you're going somewhere, you're anticipating that you're wanting to do something. And this anticipation, it's down to different legs of a journey having different levels of anticipation. So just think on an outward leg. What you're doing is you're thinking about your day at work. You're planning what's going to happen. You might be running through in your mind things you're going to say to people, things you need to get done. You're distracting yourself. But on the way back, you're thinking about things that you're going to be doing before you go to bed. And these tend to be more enjoyable things. Not that work isn't enjoyable, it is. But generally, it's those activities in the evening, the ones that you're really looking forward to. And don't you always find time on an evening flies by? You get home and the next thing you know, it's time for bed. So the result of this, the return trip, it can appear to be shorter than the outward one. There was another experiment, this one carried out online. In here, participants, they were asked a series of questions. As part of this, they were told they were going to watch a video on an external website. Unknown to the participants, a 15-second clip of a black box with a spinning circle was inserted both before and after the video. The participants, they were then split into two groups. The first, they were told and then they were shown that they're going to watch a funny video. The second group, well, they were told and then shown a boring video. After watching the videos, the participants, they were asked to estimate what the length of the black clips were. In the first group, they were really good at estimating the length of the clips. The second group, that's the one with the boring video, they underestimated the length of the clips. This demonstrated that where there's a heightened sense of anticipation, you've been told you're going to watch that funny video, time estimation is good. But when the anticipation level is low, then we perceive time as passing slower than it does. On the outward leg of a journey, we're full of anticipation, so we tend to be able to better estimate the time. But on the return leg, that anticipation is gone. We're then perceiving time as passing quicker than it does. This anticipation, it also has the opposite result when something bad happens. You find yourself in a serious situation, an emergency's happened. People often report that time appears to slow down. It's that anticipation effect working in reverse. Something bad, it's happening, so our perception of time slows down, and that causes the time to appear to be elongated. A final experiment was carried out to look at the question of expectations. A group of participants that had recently taken a bus trip, they were questioned. They were asked to use an 11-point scale to rate how long the return trip had taken, and then compare that with the outward trip. Now this scale, it ranged from a lot shorter up to a lot longer. Where the outward trip was estimated to have taken longer than expected, the return trip was perceived as being shorter. This is due to us as humans. We tend to underestimate how long something will take. And as a slight aside, when I'm talking to people about estimating, I always tell them to take their estimate that they make, then double it. When you're on an unfamiliar trip, it will often take longer than expected. But on the return trip, well, we've been able to fine-tune that estimate. We knew how long the outward trip took, so we can tweak the estimated values. And this means that the journey, it then takes about as long as expected. The result of this is we actually perceive it as being shorter, as it's meeting the expected time, rather than taking longer than that outward expectation. This question, I've really enjoyed it. It's been quite interesting. It's surprising how easy it is to trick ourselves into perceiving time as different than it actually is. And a lot of the experiments I've found, they show sometimes quite contradictory results. So it's an area where there's still a lot of research going on. So the next time that you're going to get yourself ready to take a trip, when you're estimating how long it's going to take, why not try doubling your initial estimate and see if that affects how long you perceive the journey back to take. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Have you got any questions you'd like me to look at? Please drop them in the comments down below. Please hit the thumbs up button. Every time you like, every time you comment, just helps with the YouTube algorithm. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel so that you can get new videos as I release them. I'll talk to you again soon.